Well, let's continue our look at the Liberal affordability package. Joining us right now is anti-poverty activist Leigh Bursey. He is a former city councillor from Brockville, Ontario. He joins us right now from Mount Pearl, Newfoundland. Leigh, thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's quite an honor.
Listen, we're going to get to your assessment of the Liberal affordability package, but if you don't mind, I do want to ask you to share your own personal story, because in addition to working on poverty issues, based on your own personal experience, you know firsthand how it is to struggle with housing and income insecurity.
Absolutely. So right now I'm a 35-year-old newlywed homeowner in Mount Pearl, and I'm very grateful to be in that position, recognizing how many people that is a very elusive dream for. But that wasn't always the case. There was a time when my mother and I, based on some unfortunate domestic situations in my youth, ended up homeless in a tent. Then, of course, I was a municipal councillor, and even during those periods, we were definitely generationally and secretly poor. And understanding that meant that we depended on family as much as we could, wherever that was possible, and the kindness of great mentors and strangers, and eventually turned that into an opportunity where I could better serve the community myself by doing something meaningful. And now I'm on the board for the Canadian Housing Renewal Association and the Canadian Alliance to End Rural Remote Homelessness, National Alliance rather, and a variety of other organizations of that nature, chartered housing professionals. And now I'm doing street outreach.
And as you say, working on something that is very meaningful to you. And as we talk about the income insecurity that Canadians are feeling right now, we know that based on polling, the vast majority of Canadians say that they are struggling with the current cost of living. So what has inflation done to those who have less means? What have you seen firsthand? What have you heard?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people have their own preconceived notions as to why people end up poor and what some of those challenges might look like. And the fact is that while there's no doubt there's a segment of the population who may be struggling with a variety of mental health challenges or maybe addiction issues, or maybe there may have been some involvement in other means that led to that destination, the fact is that you have a lot of people who are very much struggling and are working full-time. In a service-based economy where the cost of living continues to increase, but the wages continue to stagnate. And even with some of the increases we've seen on minimum wages across the province and across the country, rather, that doesn't necessarily equate a better quality of life for people who are now feeling that pinch in other places. And we've seen that in the post-COVID-19 recovery, probably on a more astronomical, straightforward level than we had previously, where things used to etch up and sort of crawl towards something more unaffordable. Right now, we are absolutely seeing the pinch of inflation.
So when the federal government proposes GST rebates, doubling them for 6 months, dental care, rental support, what do you make of that kind of proposal?
I think that this is wonderful, and no doubt I would be the first one to champion any opportunity that we have to put money back in people's pockets, especially those who are vulnerable or struggling. We have a lot of people who are not getting their gas subsidized from where they work, who are feeling the pinch at the tanks, in spite of the fact that that's a progressive policy and probably with a well-intentioned result. We know that public transportation is costing more than it did at one point. So any opportunity to assist people, especially when we're talking about either first those who are struggling against rising rents in the private sector, and a variety of different circumstances that may make life more unaffordable than it did before, that's great. But I would caution that each and every one of the proposals I've seen has some temporary mandate attached to it. This is not a carte blanche check that's going to be there ongoing for any period of time, other than a short-term stimulus to help people get over the hump. And if it does, no doubt more money in people's pockets when they're struggling as it is, especially heading into the notorious Canadian winters that we're used to, is probably a very positive thing with definitely a well-intentioned outcome. The challenge, of course, is what does that turn into?
Yeah, I'm quickly running out of time, but I do want to ask you, because as you say, well-intentioned outcome perhaps, but there is some concern about these programs, that bringing them in may actually just raise inflation even further rather than bring it down. What do you say to that?
I think that there's always that possibility, although mathematically we know that when you raise the minimum wage, as an example, that means more people spending money in their economy. Microeconomics is still economics. The idea here is if we're willing to subsidize small businesses who were hit during COVID with debt recovery? How come we're not doing the same for those who are struggling, such as residential renters, who of course are the reason if we're able to keep people housed, we're also able to keep those units deeply affordable and avoid unnecessary increases. The fact is that any initiative that's put in place that helps people maintain a quality of life, especially in uncertain times, is a positive one, and we definitely did trumpet it. But the challenge is that there are unknown variables, and greed is a reality in economics.
Leigh Bursey, really good to speak with you today. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.